into some tips and tricks, and a bit of professional advice into how to become a professional game developer. Now, to start off with, what is a game developer? Developing a game has many different types of roles, from very technical roles like programming to very untechnical roles like illustration or marketing. Now, I'm going to be going over some main areas of different types of roles that are commonly seen in the industry. This won't be an inclusive list of every different type of game development role. There'll definitely be some that I'm forgetting, but these are the main ones I've worked with in my time in game development. So to start off with, programming. It's the thing that people think of the quickest and the most when it comes to game development. They're the people that make the mechanics, they're the people that really put together how the game functions, and without programmers, you wouldn't have games. They are a core part of any game development team. So to become a programmer, you can come from a traditional education background, doing something like computer science at university, or it's less common, but you can do an informal education, picking up things from online courses like YouTube and other online education providers. Programmers, to get jobs in the industry, need to have really good examples of code that works and code that does things in smart ways. So to do this, often programmers will keep Git repos, Git as in Git. So Git repos will show off their programming in a very practical application like an app or a game or a website. These repos will show potential employers or potential teams that they want to work with that they are capable and that they have a good skill set. For becoming a programmer in game development, there are some key languages that are worth learning if you want to become a programmer specialising in game development. To start off with, C# and C++ are the two main languages used by free software Unity and Unreal. In Unreal, you can get away with not having to program anything using their blueprint system, but if you are a programming expert, then you need to know how to program in C++ for Unreal. Now, if you're using Unity, C# is their language. There are many other game development softwares that require different programming skills and languages, so it's best to branch out and try a little bit of everything and get a feel for how it all works. So next on the list is game designers. So these are the people that specialise in things like level design, mechanics design, and a whole slew of other areas. They basically give the game its feel without the art side of things. When a game has a really I hate this term, but my programming teacher used to always say it to me, a juicy feel. When a game feels like it plays right, that is when a game designer has done a good job. So a game designer is often the people that you think of the most when it comes down to how influential they are on the outcome of the game. Generally, game designers have a background in quality assurance, QA work, and they also have a lot of examples of previous work, hobby projects, university projects, that sort of thing that they've worked on that feel really good to play. To become a professional game designer, you need to have some sort of education, if it is formal or informal, university, college, or YouTube, online education. Or there's another type of education I haven't mentioned yet, community involvement, making mods, making edits to games that already exist is a great way to get experience in this area. Now here's something you might not think of when it comes to game developers. Illustration, the artists. So artists are what makes a game feel right. When it comes to the style and the art and the colours and the lights. So there's lots of different types of artists that work in a game. On a AAA game, one of the big industry games that you see come out every year, there are hundreds of artists that work on each game, and they all have their different specialities. But for the sake of keeping this video nice and concise, I'm going to lump them all into one and say artists. So artists, to get jobs in game development, have to have really good art portfolios. Now, an art portfolio looks different depending on your style, what type of work you want to do, if you're a 3D artist versus a 2D artist, but the one thing they all keep in common is you have to have a very extensive, well laid out, quality over quantity portfolio. To work in games as an artist, it's not always essential to have a history of making art for games. There are many cases of artists that will work maybe purely in a 2D space and then get a job working as an animator on a game or something like that. Or they'll create the concept art for a game, you know, give it its feel before anyone's made an animation at all. Specifically on 3D specialists, 3D artists and 3D specialists aren't always the same thing. So a 3D artist will often model out things or concept things, but a 3D specialist can be somebody that specializes in 3D backgrounds, 3D weapons, 3D people. 3D specialists can work over a wide variety of industries. So games are not the only area that use 3D anymore. Movies, TV shows, even advertising uses a lot of 3D these days. So having a wide variety of industries you can work in means that often 3D specialists have a lot of experience doing lots of different things. But the one thing in common that you need is the ability to work through different software. Now, often, as I'm recording this, Maya is the prime software to use. An up-and-coming software is Blender, and also Max is occasionally used in, well, games adjacent industries like simulation. An area that you can get experience in for working in 3D before you actually try and dive right into a game is creating asset packs. Now, if you take a look on the Unity shop or on Unreal, you'll see people selling asset packs. Now, these are groups of models with animations or rigging that you can just drag and drop into your games. Now, this is a great way to get experience of working on a game without the pressure of being on a team and having a deadline. If you want to create an asset pack of something you're really passionate about, say you want to make an asset pack all about different types of fruit, or you want to make an asset pack of Greek heroes, you can create that and then you can sell that on for a little bit of money, and it's a great way to get experience and get paid for your experience. If you go into 2D animation, you have to become pretty comfortable animating in other people's styles. You need to create a consistent workflow for all animations in the game. So you need to be comfortable communicating and operating with your concept artists and any other animators on your team. It's pretty rare that you'll be the only person working on an animation in a game. Now, audio is one of these areas. There tends to be not so many games audio specialists. A lot of audio is very similar between games and movies. You know, dark footsteps in an alley is the same sounds in a game and a movie. Audio specialists in games often have a little bit of programming experience. For example, Untitled Goose Game, the audio specialist there used and chopped up a song to get more, to become more excitable and fast-paced when you're in action moments, and when it's really peaceful, it just sort of flows really peacefully. So the music changes based on what you're doing in the game, which is really, really cool. Now, going on to a little more of a technical role, a UI specialist. UI stands for user interface. Now, this is things like menus, buttons, how a game's inventory is laid out, how crafting menus are put out. This is the way that your players interact with your own settings through the game, and a UI specialist is pretty essential for making sure they have a good user experience. So a UI specialist tends to come from a graphic design background or have a good background in developing apps and things like that already. UI specialists also tend to work pretty closely with the QA specialists on helping improve user accessibility and things that the users really need from this game or app or whatever. Now, a QA role is generally like the junior of the team. It's often a fairly low considered role, but it's pretty essential for making sure your game works. There's been a lot of studios in the news in the last couple of years that have got away with exporting fairly half-baked games, and that's because they didn't invest time into QA. So to start working in QA, you don't need a portfolio, you don't need previous experience, but what you do need is a really good communication method. So being able to write reports and include all the details needed to replicate bugs, being able to talk about bugs in a way that isn't confusing, and being able to really clearly communicate to programmers, to artists, to game designers, where the problem lies and how you think they could fix it. Now, you're not always going to have the answer. Sometimes you're just saying, I walked into the tavern, ordered a beer and it gave me bread. But sometimes you're going to say, I think you might have just mislabeled an asset there. So working in QA tends to be your entry into games, and from there you can start branching out and finding a specialist role that really fits your passions. Now, this is all good and well, but how do you get started? You've got to know people, right? If you don't know people, then you don't know where the jobs are. If you don't know where the jobs are, then you're just sort of sitting there going, I really want to do this, but I don't know how. So networking is the best way, in my eyes, to understand what your local community needs, what your local community is passionate about, and how to get involved. So networking is a big corporate term, but it generally means making friends and acquaintances with people in the community, turning up to events, getting involved and sticking your hand up when people say, hey, I need a hand with this. Now, that doesn't mean throw your life into making friends, only making friends, but it does mean if people are running a day or something like that, like a minor event where you can show up and get chatting to some people showing off some games, that's a great opportunity to get to know people and get to understand what local attitudes are like. Now, it should go without saying, but if you start treating people as less just because they work in QA rather than as a lead programmer, people are going to develop a wrong opinion of you. You need to be fairly consistent in how you treat people and not treat people based on their position or role in a company. People can often move around a lot in a company, and unless you have a deep understanding, you've got no idea where they sit in the grand scheme of things. So the best virtues when you come into professional game development: number one, team player. It's no good if you're a rock star programmer or anything like that if you can't get along with the people you're working with. That is the number one reason people don't get hired, even though they have all the skills, is if people don't think they'll get along with the rest of the team. If you come in with an attitude, thinking you're better than everyone else, that shows, and people aren't going to appreciate that. Another thing that's pretty important as a virtue for coming to work in game development is independent work. Now, a lot of jobs will give you an itemised list of everything you need to do one after the other. Games is a little more freedom than that. And with freedom comes responsibility. You won't often have somebody sitting over your shoulder looking at the work you're doing, making sure you're doing the right thing all the time and not goofing off. And with that comes a self-responsibility that if you don't get your task done in a reasonable time frame, you probably won't keep your job, because it's all up to you to make sure that you keep the standard that you've set for yourself. Games is a tech-based platform, and with any tech-based platform, things move so quickly. There's new skills and there's new programs all the time, and you can't just learn one thing and then use that for the rest of your career. You constantly have to be self-innovating on the different types of skills you use and the different programs you use, and it's about personally taking responsibility for your own skill set and keeping it up to date with what's going on. And so we come to the last bit of huge big no-nos. Please do not do this or you will develop a terrible reputation. So, the big one, Homophobia and transphobia and racism is a huge no-no in the games industry. Maybe you'll see examples of somebody displaying these attitudes in media, but in real life, games are a melting pot of the arts and technology, both areas with a lot of diversity and a lot of acceptance of difference in each other. And if you show that you're not going to be on board with accepting people, then you'll develop a bad reputation and, well, no one will want to work with you if you have a bad reputation like that. Another thing is taking credit for other people's work. Now, this goes mostly without saying, but if you take other people's work and say it's your own in any way, or make minor modifications and then say the whole thing is yours, people look at what everyone does, and if they notice you're taking credit for other people's work, nobody's going to want to work with you or show you their work at all. So it becomes a huge thing for making sure you keep your connections to other people, that you are honest and open about when you have used other people's work to piggyback your own, and also when you've just used just the system and not made any edits and it's not your system. It's alright to use bits of code from other people or artwork assets as long as you don't try and tell people that you made it. As a professional game developer, one of the things that you either learn very quickly or you learn the hard way is that you are, in a way, a type of micro-celebrity. And while that means you don't always get the fame and the money associated with that, you do end up developing a public opinion of yourself. Now, this means that you have to be fairly careful with what you put out into the world on social media, in public spaces, in speeches or online content, that you're not having radical opinions that are going to isolate or punch down at anyone, and that this is maintained throughout social media. So basically, you need to think about how people are going to react to your opinions, because it could threaten your job if you have a really strong opinion that is harmful to others and you put it out there. Now, people are all individuals, we all have our own eccentricities, and that's normal and natural, and it's not always going to be a 100% everyone will agree with you all the time gig, but keeping it on a professional scale and making sure that you are doing things in the kindest way possible means that you will always be on the right side of the line when it comes to personal opinions. Now, keeping all that in mind, this is a very short list of things to become a professional game developer. Now, it's worth exploring lots of different areas. Trying out a little bit of programming, trying out a little bit of audio, taking your personal interests and seeing how they can apply to game development. Personally, my childhood history was in art. I did a lot of 2D art. But when I got into game development, I found that 2D art in games just wasn't what I wanted to do. And I actually really liked 3D art. And so now I've become a 3D specialist, but I can also program, and I can also do a little bit of audio, and I can do a little bit of everything, so I'm more of a generalist. So with all that in mind, there are some resources linked at the end of the video if you'd like to continue reading up. And I've linked some really cool portfolios for examples of really good of programming, game design, 3D, 2D, animation, all these different things to show you how a professional sets out their work and what quality it's at. Now, you're still developing, you're not a professional yet, but if you keep the attitude of I am a game developer and I'm working towards becoming a pro, then eventually you'll become somebody people look up to. Now, thank you so much for watching this video. I've linked some resources in the description down below, and I will see you all in the next video.